Welcome to App Talk with Uptick, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of how to grow apps and games. We speak with industry experts about specific strategies, tools, and tactics they use to find success, and we keep up to date with emerging news and trends in the ever-changing gaming, technology, and marketing ecosystem. My name is Sandro Acosta, Director of Marketing here at Uptick, and joining me today are my co-host,
Warren Woodward, co-founder of Uptick.
And our esteemed guest, friend of the pod,
David Bloom from Plunk.
Awesome.
David
So
Bloom,
excited to have you, David.
Also known as the patron saint of Uptick in our circles. Yeah, it's great to have you on, David. David is former boss, longtime mentor, and helped us really bring in a couple of our initial partners here at Uptick in our early days. So great to finally have you on, man.
Yeah, really great to be here with you guys, and been fun watching your progress and your contribution to this industry. And this industry is gonna need a lot more of it. So exciting times, lots to discuss. Let's hit it.
Let's do it.
Cool. So we just got back from GDC. If you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend checking out our feed for over the last couple of weeks. We published about 7 or 8 episodes with short form interviews from the floor of GDC out of the Stardust Lounge. So once again, thanks for Stardust for having us. Really appreciate all the effort that they did to make us comfortable there. Got a lot of really, really exciting guests. So definitely encourage you to check that out and let us know what you thought of the experiment. I mean, obviously it was a new form of our podcast, so a little bit different than usual.
Yeah, it was super fun. Thank you again to Stardust, and that we learned a lot doing our first kind of in the field podcast, and I think we did like 16 interviews or something, Xander.
Yeah, some massive number.
Yeah, so super fun, different format, audio issues, but yeah, definitely cool experience, and let us know if you want to see more of that.
Cool. About 6 articles to cover, so we'll try and move quickly because we also have a big meaty segment with David. I know, David, you may not have a ton to talk about this first segment, but we want to just sort of jump right in. There's some news that we can't ignore. There's a collection of 3 articles around Axie Infinity. Now, Axie Infinity is an Uptick client, so while we do have some stake in the outcome of their company, we do think we can also provide a nice unbiased opinion. So we're going to take the news from most depressing to exciting, and it gets better as we go along. So we'll start at the bottom and we'll get there. So the first article is from Substack entitled Community Alert: Ronin Validators Compromised. So this is the official release around the Ronin bridge hack. Specifically from the article, the Ronin bridge was exploited for 1,750,000 Ethereum and 25 million USD coin. So in all worth about $625 million. The bridge was halted as a result of this hack, and they are working with law enforcement officials, forensic cartographers, and investors to make sure all the funds are recovered and reimbursed. One thing to note is that basically everything on the Ronin bridge, or on the Ronin bridge, AXS, Ronin, and SLP are safe. So just to sort of take a step back and explain what this is very, very briefly, if you think about a crypto bridge as how deep do you want to go into this? There's a really good article we'll link, or a podcast that we'll link to, Deconstructor of Fund Tokenomics podcast, which explains this in incredible detail. But the best way to think about this is if you think of a bridge as a place where you can stash, as if you're going into a casino to convert Ethereum. Warren, you want to try to do a quick?
This is currency.
I'll do this in like a minute.
Yeah. So
this is a blockchain currency exchange. Is really what a bridge functions as. So
well, it's a little more than that, right?
This hack has been a good excuse for the entire mainstream gaming industry to learn a little bit more about how bridges work. And I won't profess to be an expert here. Like Xander said, we're going to link a really good episode of the Deconstructor Fund Tokenomics podcast. They did a very nice kind of layman's terms deep dive of how this works. And the analogy they used was, if you've heard us talk before, or you're remotely in the crypto space, you know that Ethereum, which is the most active chain used, is not very efficient for processing transactions. It's slow, it's expensive. So there's a number of solutions that developers have brought to make this more efficient. For Axie's purposes, they built what's called a side chain, and this is essentially a way that you can do one transaction to start activity on the side chain, and then they can basically have a bunch of activity going on in their ecosystem. And then when you want to bring it back to the Ethereum mainnet, that's one other big transaction. On the Deconstructor Fund podcast, the way they describe this is like you basically go to the casino and you get some chips, and then you're in the casino playing with the chips while you're on the sidechain. And when you want to cash back out, you go back to the main network. So where this hack happened was basically at that point of exchange of going back to the main network from the Sky Mavis owned sidechain.
Yeah. So like critically, what that means is like there was basically a single wallet that was holding all these assets, and then they were collateralizing all these trades that were going on in the Ronin sidechain. And so then when you wanted to cash out the Ronin sidechain, you would basically take the assets from that wallet and can run back to ETH. And this allows you to drop costs on the sidechain, which allows you to transact much more readily on Axie. And they did this as they were scaling in order to increase the throughput of the Axie game. And they really took off when they made the sidechain. However, what happened was someone was then basically robbed the bank or robbed the casino and took the $620 million in assets. Okay, so that's the stuff, the depressing part to start with. We'll sort of leverage that into more exciting news going forward. So the next article is another Sky Mavis article entitled from Substack entitled "Sky Mavis raises 150 million, led by Binance, funds to be restored on the Ronin chain." So a small quote from the article: "Today we announced $150 million in USD funding round led by Binance with participation from Animoca brands A16Z, Dialect, and Paradigm. The round combined with Sky Mavis' balance sheet will be used to ensure that all users affected by the Ronin Bridge validator hack will be reimbursed. The Ronin Bridge is undergoing a security audit, and which will take several weeks. And so basically, and they intend to completely bring the Ronin Bridge back online and reimburse anyone who wants to pull funds out of the ecosystem. So good news. All I was going to say is hats off. That was really fast. About 6 days from the announcement of the hack to when they announced the closing of the new funding. Obviously, this is something that they had to spring into action to make happen. A bit of a bummer that they have to take dilutive financing in order to cover what they want to reimburse the players, but it's the right thing to do. I guess. What do you guys think? Maybe you have a little more opinions here, David.
Well, just from a PR management perspective, 30 plus years in technology and seeing uh-ohs happen, I couldn't have been more impressed with the way they delineated the problem, described their actions, got ahead of the problem in terms of managing information to their community, owning the issue, and having investors that see the big picture, that were willing. Investors aren't crazy about putting investment that immediately gets washed right out to their user base, but they see the importance of making sure they have a happy community. They do have a 2.6 million community, and that's impossible to create in these days, as we'll get to later in this podcast, I think. But the way that they've communicated and got ahead of this and assured people that they're going to make it right. I mean, they're still locked out from making withdrawals, and there's still some ongoing issues to manage. But I've been impressed with their communications. When I read their timeline of communications over the last 5 days, I was really impressed with how candid, how they took ownership, and how they're communicating to their community. It's seems like a very good lesson in management of a crisis of this magnitude.
Yeah, and the value of an Axie Infinity user is like maybe the most valuable thing ever seen in gaming. And so it's really like that community is really, really a differentiator for them. So them making the community whole is really, really critical, I think, for the long-term success of that company. I mean, Warren, I'm sure you have thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to keep it brief. I mean, one, David touched on an interesting point, which is I haven't heard talked about as much, which is just sort of the management and PR aspect of this. But it comes again back to that different dynamic in Web3 of the player owner. Right. And you see that in sort of the transparency and depth of communication around the issue, where, if there was some sort of hack at, EA or something like this, we probably wouldn't see this level of detail and promptness of response. But when you have this player owner dynamic, there's a different level of respect that we see in the communications to the Axie community, and the transparency given by the team. And I think by any good team in Web3, like they will acknowledge that there's for a number of reasons, there's a higher standard they need to hold themselves to. One is, because of this player owner dynamic, and the other is because this is the formative stages. And like, however goes the early leaders such as Axie, this sets the precedent for like what will and won't be allowed and supported in the gaming world. You know, if the player community was never made whole, that would bode really poorly for sort of mainstream acceptance, support from the platforms of Axie. So I think there's a number of factors besides just them being good people and wanting to do the right thing that made it imperative for both them and their investors to do the right thing, make the players whole here. And so, yeah, it's just very interesting, and I think I'm pretty proud of all parties involved for how they're handling what is.
Yeah, let's be clear. This is a
gut-wrenching thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a week into this. And so to organize 4-5 investors groups like that and get consensus and make a declarative statement to your community that quickly is no easy task.
Right.
You're right. They all had to be on board and they understand the greater good and the, you know, preserving what they've built here, but still getting that level of cooperation is impressive.
Well, if you look at the people who invested, I mean, these are who's who of the leaders in investment in Web3 technology. And so they realize that the entire ecosystem that they've just poured $1 bajillion into hinges off the success of this product. And so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, definitely the right thing to do overall. One thing that did jump out to me, which is a little bit interesting and just sort of a nuance, is the Sky Mavis is the entity which raises funding. The Axie DAO will remain under collateralized while they work with law enforcement to claw back the assets. So it's interesting. They have a very there's an interesting dynamic here between a couple of different legal entities. Sky Mavis is the one who is raising the funds. They will be guaranteeing the running chain. But just an interesting note that the Axie DAO, which is a distinct entity, will remain under collateralized, and basically if they can't get the money back in 2 years, they're going to put it to the DAO to take a vote as what they should do next. So just an interesting piece of governance.
Yeah, and I think we're going to do a whole episode soon that's just a deep dive on DAOs, because there's so many, it's such an emerging, you know, kind of way to structure a business, and there's a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of complexity to it. Even the people operating DAOs, I think, often have, you know, some misunderstanding like what is and what isn't legal. But yeah, worth a whole deep dive on itself. I think we won't go too much into this one.
Warren and I were arguing about it yesterday, and we realized we actually have no idea what the hell we're talking about. Maybe we should just get an expert
leading the blind. Yeah.
Okay, Warren, you want to take us away with the interesting, exciting news? We got some big exciting news.
So, you know, news cycles move quick, and you know, we were off last week for the GDC break. Yeah, I mean, what's exciting is, you know, all of this was leading up to the Axie Origin launch. So Axie Origin is essentially the next evolution of Axie, and that has finally come out in early access. Yeah, today, late last night, I was able to download the client and start playing. And it's exciting. It's an exciting moment. I think this is, I think a lot of the industry is, if this plays out how I anticipate, I think this is a historic moment that has happened in the last 24 hours. And I'm not, you know, super active on Twitter, but I did a long tweet thread about why I think this release is important. And I just want to like quickly touch on the bullet points from that. So, you know, why is Axie Origin matter, and why is this potentially like a game-changing moment for the Web3 gaming ecosystem? So the first is that this is a free-to-play evolution. Anyone who's tried to get into Web3 gaming, it's a huge pain in the ass. You have to jump through a million hoops, and removing the initial investment and you know, the need to like buy cryptocurrency before trying the leading game is huge. That really opens up the space. The second is that the whole game has been developed with the large goal of being available and supported on major mobile platforms. Like that's been in the design choices from the beginning. And you know, we can say from some of our work with the platforms and with the Axie team, been very productive conversations with both major mobile platforms about how to not just allow, but actually have the platform support the game. This is also part of why it's not out on mobile same day and date, is we need to make sure, like, we can't kind of sneak in approvals with Axie. We need to make sure that we do this in a way that's, you know, really blessed by the platforms and done hand in hand with them. But that's another huge thing. It's like, for so much of the world, they can only game on mobile. If this game is designed from the ground up to be a mobile friendly experience, that's huge and gives access to so much more of the world. And then my third, there's obviously some bias here, but the team, this team is like, besides being early pioneers, they're like shockingly humble. They've really learned from their failures and successes so far. And they've taken that all to heart. Like this team never sleeps. Like they seem to be online, working, communicating like 24 hours a day. So a lot of faith in the team. And then the last one is the community. There's a lot of toxicity in the crypto space. And as we think that Axie Origin for a lot of people will be their first step into the space, we can say like from spending time in this community, like it's a pretty welcoming, friendly place. It's welcoming to newcomers, relatively light on toxicity. Like my first times joining like the Axie Discord, people were super friendly and welcomed me there. And I think it's just like, if people are gonna step their foot into the door, like crypto needs to be not a non-scary place to take that first step. So it's a really good first home. So obviously we have a bias, you know, Axie is our partner, but honestly, I would have all these same thoughts if we weren't working with them. Like this is part of why we cared so much to work with this team. So we'll see, like, let's check in a year from now and see if the launch of this actually was something game changing. I think of any game built to date in the Web3 space, like for these factors, it has the best chance of really breaking through to mainstream gaming.
Go download it now. What do you think, David? Any thoughts here?
Well, I look at these kind of inflection points that Warren talks about. There's a great book I read quite some time ago called The Ricochet Effect. And it just talked about what business opportunities, what user behaviors, what societal changes occur when somebody creates a piece of infrastructure or enables something to happen that's never been able to happen. You know, the railroads built retail. We wouldn't have local retail if it wasn't for railroads. And the number of things that spawn off of that, if you just think about it, you can easily go to the next one and the next one, and just see how it changed all of America and how we live and recreate and shop and enjoy ourselves. The fun thing is to think about how this creates so many other opportunities that you can build on top of. The free access is going to educate a lot of people. This is way beyond gaming. The people that have been participating in this are learning about, well, you know, on the worst case, just crypto speculation, but on the best case, you know, how to create value and monetization events and in the context of social interaction and entertainment all at the same time. I don't know where it goes. I have no idea. I don't have any crystal ball here, but I do agree with Warren that this creates a mainstream accessibility that's going to spawn multiple opportunities. And the people that see them first are going to, you know, create entirely new businesses and new solutions and enable new opportunities for all of us. So it's fun just to watch, just be a spectator. Even if you're not directly a participant, you have to be awed and kind of humbled by what we've just kind of enabled to happen, whatever that might be. That's true for Uptick. It's true for anybody that's, you know, building tools and resources to make these communities stronger and you know, more fun and more safe and more secure and everything. So yes, I agree. This is a ricochet effect where people need to see, all right, this ball's going to bounce off the wall and all this opportunity is going to happen. Where's that opportunity going to be? It's fun.
So maybe going from, you know, potentially beginning of new eras to potentially end of an era. This next, yeah.
Like how you did that.
Pretty proud of that one. This next story is from The Verge. So, you know, I think most people are aware in the games industry, but E3 for 2022 has officially been canceled. So just a couple of quick pull quotes. Video game trade show and marketing event was originally scheduled to be held in person this year. However, in January, E3 was shifted to be online only due to the pandemic. Now it has been completely canceled. There's been growing concerns about the fate of E3 for the last few years. COVID-19 continued to impact in-person gatherings, making the prospect of large and famously packed event unattractive. Last week, a number of video game industry professionals reported testing positive for COVID-19 after attending GDC. In addition to pandemic concerns, video game publishers have increasingly withdrawn from E3 in favor of hosting their own online events like Nintendo Direct, EA Play Live, and Sony's State of Play.
Really buried the lead with that one.
Yeah, so I mean, this is really interesting. So David, you're an OG. You've been in gaming and in you know, the tech industry for a while. I guess, like, first simple question, like, is E3 just over? Like, they've said they're going to come back next year, but like, is that wishful thinking? Are we just at the end of this era?
I think it's over. I think it's, you know, it was canceled previously. and
Yeah.
had a hiatus for a number of years and tried to come back. And they tried to add more of a consumer game player community energy to it. And they've never done a good job of that. So it winds up being a B2B conference. Most of it occurs off venue
Right.
in the Marriott, in
Much
the
like
local
GDC.
hotels. I don't think I've spent much time on the floor of that show in the last 4 or 5 years. So I think it is over. And I think, you know, the conference lost its energy. It lost its relevance. There might be some timing issues between GDC and Gamescom and some other, you know, more regional shows put on by people like, you know, Pocket Gamer Connects and GamesBeat and such. So I think it's just lost its relevancy and it's lost its value proposition. Very expensive to show up there as a company. And it became a very small B2B conference held in the lobbies of the local hotels over the last few years. And that's not enough to justify the full production.
Here's the key takeaway from that paragraph that Warren read a second ago. Video game publishers have increasingly withdrawn from E3 in favor of hosting their own online events like Nintendo's Direct Showcase, E3, EA Play Live, Sony's State of Play. I think
So
that's
why
what's
do you
really
think
happening.
so why do you think that line is so important, Xander? Elaborate on that.
Right. So what I think functionally is happening is we're seeing basically the debundling of what was originally the conference, right? And so now these companies, gaming is huge. E3 was important when it was a point of consolidation to bring together a bunch of disparate entities that didn't have the resources themselves in order to host these events. And then the combination of all those entities made E3 special. Gaming is now so massive that each of these different entities are big enough to host their own events. And I think that's the key thing here is gaming now has these games, if a events online or offline event strategy is critical to the company, they are willing to do it themselves. It's cheaper for them to do it themselves. They can vertically integrate and own the entire thing. And so I think that's the key thing here is these companies are being big enough that, you know, there's not as much advantage to go through a third party and have to pay them a bunch and coordinate with all these things when you can't control as much of the process. I think that's the key thing here.
Right. And E3 is also like it's the byproduct of a pre-digital era too, right? So I think controlling those channels and it's so much easier for developers to directly reach their audience now. It just has diminished the value of, you know, the big E3 unveil.
I mean, the ROI of wallpapering the sides of buildings and putting elaborate physical structures in place to get above the noise has been diminishing for many, many years. So I think your comment about, you know, it's an artifact of a pre-digital world is probably the important thing here.
Right.
So it's been dead for years now. This is the admission, not the
Cool. Well, speaking of dead, we have another negative trend, although see, that's my transition trying to match Warren's. Warren said to me earlier, mobile is dead. I'm like, okay, that's like slight over exaggeration. But anyway, there are some serious negative trends in mobile, and we're going to touch on those now. These are two articles from GameIndustry.biz. The first one is entitled 40% of mobile companies in the US and UK suffer losses post IDFA. And the second one is a Sensor Tower report entitled Mobile Games Earnings Were Down 7% in Q1 of 2022 at $21 billion. Okay, so I'll read them both briefly. I'll just rattle off some of the stats briefly. For the first article, new research showed almost 40% of mobile companies in the US and UK have lost revenue since Apple implemented changes to its identifiers for advertisers last year. 55% of marketers said it was more difficult to do marketing in 2021 compared to the year before. And of the 39 companies that lost revenue due to Apple's IDFA changes, 75% said they felt it put their future of their business at risk. The other big key takeaway from this article was about 60% of firms surveyed said they reduced spend on iOS and redirected to Android, while 27% did the opposite. One thing to note is this was a survey of 320 people with responsibility for advertising budgets at mobile games and app developers in UK and US. So it was a survey, it's not hard data. Okay, so that's one big cluster of data. I want to just quickly roll on to the next one. This is the Sensor Tower article. A new Sensor Tower report says that during the first quarter of 2022, mobile games generated 21 billion, which represented a decrease of 7% compared to the previous year. That's pretty freaking massive. The Google Play market revenue declined for 14% as it earned $8 billion, and Apple's App Store dropped 2% in consumer spending to 13 billion. And okay, that's one piece of it. Then additionally, Sensor Tower said that spending for games marketing grew 41% year over year during Q1. So think about that for a second. Decrease in revenue, 7% overall, 41% increase in games marketing. Yikes. What do you guys think?
There's a lot to unpack here. Yeah, so I was joking with Xander that mobile's dead. That's definitely not the case. I mean, we're huge bulls on. I think like it is completely irresponsible to ship any product that mobile is not like the primary devices for, because as I said a second ago, it's just the default device for not just for gaming, but for life these days. But I think some of the sheen is off the mobile industry and some of the medium and long tail companies that are not the innovators, that are not the proven winners. I think we're seeing them die off pretty quickly, and there's a number of factors here. I mean, the articles called out the effect of Apple's privacy changes. I think that's part of it, and I mean, honestly, like last year was painful, like to adjust our tactics, like as large media buyers around that. But it's not like there's not a path forward. I mean, today for a lot of our games, like we do more advertising on iOS than Android quite profitably. You just have to be willing to adjust. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I would say lack of ability to adapt and lack of innovation of the actual core products are two trends that have really worried me in mobile the last few years. I mean, I was looking at the top charts both for non-gaming and games apps this week, and it was like a time machine. It's just like 7 years ago. Like it was just every brand was something that could have been there years ago. And I feel like we've seen less and less innovation in both the gaming and non-gaming space, and probably that's leading to some of this as well. So some of it is market side and ability to market effectively, and some I think is product side. So David, again, you're an OG. You've been years in the gaming space, and you're also now developing apps in the non-gaming space, but mobile OG in general. Like what's your take on the current state of mobile, and why are we seeing these trends?
Again, I don't think this is news. This is the natural maturation of any marketplace that's involved in publishing. If you look at the history of magazines, radio, TV, any form of publishing, it matures and you get into this haves and have-nots, and the costs of entry go up for new entrants, both in terms of innovation threshold, the amount of money it takes to penetrate into that market. I do want to focus in on the lack of innovation. We do seem to be stalled. There is relative to our expectations of innovation, and all of our directive on creating a mobile experience is to wow your audience. And the wows have slowed down. The ability to create a new wow that you haven't experienced is harder. And I think that's slowed down a little bit, and that's disconcerting. There's some enabling things on the horizon that aren't quite mature enough to unlock a lot more innovation. Different techs that are coming along in terms of augmented reality and such, that I think will unleash a lot of new creativity. But this is predicted, and now IDFA accelerated for sure what was happening already. We experienced this years ago when some big publishers bought all of the inventory on ad networks out at Christmas time over the holidays. Right. And we all got like, whoa, we can't afford that. And that was happening then as a seasonality. That was just baked into your marketing plan, just expecting some people could not afford to advertise around Thanksgiving to Christmas. Well, now we're getting to that all the time. The companies that have many apps in the market and can build their own app to app kind of behavioral modeling and advertising intelligence system are going to have a huge advantage, or somebody is trying to break in with an app that's not well known and doesn't have distribution power around it. So this is just the maturation of business. And I think IDFA accelerated it. And I think people's expectation that Google would have to match it. I have to add, some context here. Apple didn't mean to hurt the small guy. They've always been the champion of that independent studio that's innovative and creative, but they've been caught up in a competitive war between Facebook and Google, who have advertising dependent business models. So they made a very conscious decision to force Facebook and Google to hurt their ad business, which Apple does not rely on. They
It's
were
funny,
willing
though.
to sacrifice all this ad revenue in order to have a competitive advantage over, or leverage a competitive advantage over Google and Facebook, and also take the moral high ground on consumer privacy.
I think that they didn't lend credence to Facebook's argument that they were actually driving value to small businesses and small app developers specifically. And I think that's one of the big, like, if I look back what Apple did, I mean, the reality is they made it harder to be an app developer because the margins are worse. And so, and like, I think that's a serious mistake from their perspective. I mean, more app developers is good for the ecosystem, and they've made it very, very difficult. And so I understand why they did it. I mean, they basically, we've talked to them about it. They basically didn't believe that Facebook was driving a lot of value to these app developers. They're like, oh, they go to the app store and find apps. That's how people find apps. And it's very clear that they were wrong in that assessment.
Yes, they have definitely hurt the small innovative community. Necessity is the mother of invention. They'll find other ways. They won't be as easy. They'll be harder. It'll discourage more innovation in the short term. Hopefully there'll be some things that unlock us. The simple truth is that I don't know how many years ago we saw these social media titans testifying in front of Congress, and there was just no competition on the landscape. And so the concern was just building that they had just that's unlimited power. TikTok, it's just a great imbalancer of all the power. Now we're talking about how Facebook is hugely competitively impacted at a point where they may not have a response to TikTok just 3 years later. The landscape does change very quickly. We'll find other ways. I don't know how quickly, but these other venues and avenues will present themselves as opportunity to market yourself, to get your app discovered and known and used and engaged with. But it threw a big, stick in the spokes of everybody's velocity in making those, IDFA changes, and it's affected everybody. But it's not a commentary on the mobile business, its strength or its value or importance. The mobile smartphone has won. It's one in places that don't have any internet infrastructure beforehand, and it's one in places that do, like the United States. So it is the device of preference, of high use. It's the device you take with you. It's the device you can't be without. And that's still going to be the focus going forward, but it's harder to break in right now.
It pulls forward the necessity for multi-platform strategy, and also it requires that the ingress point into those multi-platform products are going to be increasingly off of mobile. Anyway, Warren, you want to pivot us?
Yeah, no. So the analogy that comes to mind is like, yes, these privacy changes from Apple accelerated things, but I think they just accelerated. They're not the root cause. It's kind of like we touched on E3 earlier. I think COVID accelerated the death of E3, but I think it was on that path anyway. But I do think, and this kind of ties to our main segment with you, David, like a huge factor here is just kind of like a lull in innovation in the mobile space. And David, that's kind of what we wanted to dig in with you in the main segment today. You've been in the mobile industry for a while, and we want to dig into this idea with your new company, Plunk, of creating new segments in any market, but we'll focus on the mobile app market. Like, you've been plenty of reps with mobile games and successes there, but you decided to carve a new niche really with this new company you've built. I think it's an app where you don't have a direct competitor that you can just look and copy their business model and copy aspects of their product. So we want to dig into this a little bit with you. So, I mean, maybe to start, just tell us a little bit more about your personal history, David, and about Plunk.
Well, Plunk's probably more about my personal history, I guess the formative history, than any of the game companies I did. As you know, Warren, most people don't try and advertise myself as a gamer. I like building businesses. I love being part of passionate industries, and that puts gaming at the very top of the list of things you'd want to go to, with people that every day come into the office with an abundance of energy that rubs off on you and keeps you young and creative and innovative. it's just fun to turn teams loose on making games and building game communities. And so for that reason, gaming served me well, but I was not additive to the game building, developing, designing process, and wasn't that guy that would parachute and try and add value into a game team. I enjoyed it, but it's not part of my wheelhouse on a personal set of skills basis. Real estate was first exposed to me in 94, 95. I just serendipitously got called in to help put the original real estate listings. They used to be published in a book. I mean, I'm old here, so bear with me, but you used to get in a car with a realtor with a book and you dog ear the pages of the homes you'd want to go see, and you drive around and see them. And the development of the internet in the early 90s, real estate was kind of late to the game. They didn't get their listings up on the internet until 94, 95, and in a very limited, controlled way where only realtors could access them, not consumers. That's all been broken down by the Redfins and the Zillows and many innovators that have done what every other technology disruptors does: empower consumers directly with information that they formerly couldn't get on their own. When you go to buy a car before you had a Carfax or a Kelley Blue Book, you were at the mercy of a conversation with somebody on the other side as a car salesman who knew a lot more about cars, knew a lot more about leasing, knew a lot more about how they price them than you did. And it was a very frustrating, anxious experience. And buying a home, used to be very much that way, and it still is, because it's getting more complex. There's more options, and it's just a higher stakes decision. It's the most important financial decision we make. So the idea of Plunk was to empower consumers, empower homeowners to know more about this most important, largest single financial decision they ever make in their life.
Right.
It's 80% of your net worth when you retire. It's the largest, most significant financial investment that 97% of Americans make. So it is a place where you shelter, build families, nurture relationships, raise children that can be great, community citizens and strong adults. But it's also an investment strategy. And so if you look at the current trend of, I'll call them robo-advisors, this idea that software, algorithms, machine learning can help guide you through complex financial decisions like saving, investing, buying crypto. We saw the trend of Acorn, Mint, Robinhood, even the idea of managing your credit score. Now, the credit score is just a terrible game. The FICO that lords over your life. It's a black box, So somebody came along and said, let's expose how this credit score is really making your life difficult or opening up opportunities for you. Let's give you the insider information about how your credit score is working against you or working for you, and give you opportunities like Experian Boost to help yourself. The first time you log in, you can do one simple thing and get a better credit score. Now you feel empowered, you feel full of knowledge, and now you don't feel so much victimized by this mysterious algorithm that gives you a higher rate on a car loan or denies your credit app for a home loan origination. Right. So we said, wow, we can really empower consumers to know a lot more about this financial decision and help guide them, because there's so many different new and complex options available. Buy before you sell, do a swap loan, buy into a house that you're required to rent part of it. I don't, there's many of these startup concepts that are helping the affordability process, helping millennials get into home ownership who may not have the means to do it the traditional old-fashioned way with 20% down and a qualifying income that allows you to pay the mortgage. So we felt like, wow, there's just a ton of stuff we can do there. Let's build an app that is your robo-advisor for home ownership.
Right. There's a lot of stuff to dig into there. And there's where I want to pivot this conversation to is what does it mean to build a category or business segment? But I think importantly, before we go into that, I want to dig a little bit into what Plunk does. So can you talk specifically about what are the few products that you guys are working on, and what makes them unique, and why that is like, and what is the difficulty that comes to market from the uniqueness of those products?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an app that any pre-home buyer, homeowner, or home seller can get value out of. You download the app, it's free. You put in an address, we analyze your home using some complex machine learning, AI, even image analysis. And we tell you what your home is worth today. A lot of people do that. Most people wouldn't know who to trust in terms of their home value. But the truth is, a lot of the data around property is incorrect, outdated, old, or you may have updated your home, remodeled it, or somebody, before you bought it did, and there's just no record of that. So we allow you to change and edit the facts, make sure they're accurate. This is all behind passwords. You're not exposing this to the grand community. And you can upload pictures, and we'll take information off those pictures that says, wow, that kitchen is upgraded, that bathroom was remodeled. And then we give you an instant valuation for your home that's more accurate, it's more relevant, it's reflective of all the updates and the current condition of your home. The information we take off those images is the condition, wear and tear, the finish quality, and oftentimes we'll tag features that aren't known to the public record. They don't put that you have skylights or a pot rack or some nice feature that a sunroom. There's no attributes in the public record for any of that. It's actually very simple. It's bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, flooring type. Sometimes that's not even very accurate because you have multiple flooring types. So we add a bigger record to every home so you can collect more information about the home. We can be more accurate about your valuation.
Right.
So the next thing we do is we say, oh, by the way, this home could be a lot more value. If it was fully renovated, it would have what we call the Plunk value, which is the fully renovated or remodeled value of a home. So now you've got information before you even buy a home, what it could be worth if you remodeled it, fixed it up. I mean, the average consumer spends 8 to 10 years in a home, and they do everything from light touch up or light updates to kind of heavy remodeling during those 8 to 10 years. It's the fastest growing segment in all of retail, not just real estate, is remodeling. And that's because our average house is 44 years old in the United States and getting older. We can't make enough new ones, traffic patterns. You have to go into older neighborhoods and regenerate those neighborhoods. So remodeling is going to be a big thing. And so to inform consumers as to where to put their money to get the best return on investment is also part of the app. So you could fully renovate the house, or you could just update the kitchen. We tell you what the increase in value would be. We tell you what the cost would be. And so you have a clear picture of what that investment value is like. Now, you're still going to do what you want to do to make it a better home, a better place to live. But now you've got some financial guidance as to how to direct your investment and get the most out of that.
Some metrics,
home ownership experience.
So I think the goal here is to talk about how to create a business segment. I think this maybe is a great case study as to why that's a difficult task. So you've thought about this a lot, and still it took you about 5 minutes to explain the value prop of Plunk. Talk to us a bit about the difficulty, because it's such a unique product and so new. It's a difficult product to communicate the value to a consumer and to create a new business segment. Talk a little bit about that difficulty, your strategy for overcoming it, and then if there are any case studies of people who have done this really well, basically create a new segment out of nothing, what are some key takeaways that you can see that you've seen in those companies that you can pull into your own business at Plunk?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we get caught up ourselves in our aspirational creep, just like feature creep. You want to do more and more for the consumer. We want to analyze their utility bills and make recommendations how to save money. We want to help them figure out how to make income from the home. Could you Airbnb it? Could you, run a Turo business out of the garage? Could you, create a storage area that you can rent out to people? All those are strategies. There's a new one that hit last summer called Swimply, which is, do I have a pool and could I rent that out to people on the weekends, to families that don't have a pool? And these are all ideas of making more income. So I'll say the first thing in terms of building a new category, unfortunately, it's timing. You can be too early, where people aren't ready to think about the need for an app to make all these homeowner decisions. Now, the industry in general has now come around. You haven't seen that yet reflected in all their advertising, but you will very shortly. This idea that everybody goes to a hub or an app or a single place to do all things home ownership, to find people to repair your home, to find people that can help you, analyze remodeling options, or to find contractors, or to get better insurance rates. Everybody in the real estate business is trying to say, I would like to own that in the consumer's mind, that physical, online or app place where people think to put all their home information, all their contacts in a single go-to place to find those home services. So you have traditional home services business, you have the Angies, the Home Lights, the Porches, who are all trying to build this spot where you go and manage your home. So then the next thing I will tell you is there's got to be this hook. And that's the way I guess a VC would talk to you. What's your hook? What's the initial reason why you would have somebody download your app and get some value out of it? And that's where it gets really tough. You've got to make a decision, make a bet, and then you've got to kind of double down on your marketing and say, this is a worthwhile hook. People will download it for this reason. And if you want to look at some examples of people who have done this well, I've mentioned a couple already. I mean, NerdWallet, Experian have created this category that didn't exist before, managing your credit score.
Yeah.
NerdWallet started
NerdWallet's
with
a great example.
Yeah. NerdWallet started with a very simple value prop: get a credit card. And it was designed for people that had credit challenges. So you would go there and figure out how bad your credit challenge was. They would give you a high interest rate credit card, help you build your credit, and eventually get into a more manageable credit rating or score. And so now they sell all kinds of financial products. But they started with that first hook of, we're just going to focus on people who are getting dumped on because of their credit history, don't have an out, and they're going to come here and try and fix it. Apps, it turns, are great, safe places for people to figure that kind of stuff out. You don't have stress asking an app something you don't know and feel stupid that you don't know, right? You can learn it with no anxiety. This is why Robinhood teaches people to invest. They don't want to go to a stockbroker or some financial planner, admit what they don't know and ask what they feel like is dumb questions, but they can safely enter this whole investing game with Robinhood and $25 and get started and start to learn something without feeling embarrassed, stressed, or high anxiety.
Yeah.
So, Plunk has a bunch of different potential entry points. We chose remodeling. It's a popular category. It's a huge need. It's still growing. Like I said, it's still the fastest growing and largest segment in all of retail. It's going to be for years. Trouble is, it's a considered purchase. It's not something you do with one visit in a mobile app and just say, oh yeah, I'll sign up, get a Robinhood account, trade $25, see what happens. If you're committing to remodeling a bathroom, you have to contract a builder, contractor. You have to maybe get a loan to do it. There's quite a few considerations. So that creates an extra challenge and a lot of touch points. We have to nurture them along.
That makes sense.
I think those same things that you identified as the challenges, though. I mean, as someone who got to use the beta of Plunk, for me, the hook was kind of actually just quickly addressing those challenges you just talked about. Like if it's a complex thing to think about taking on various remodeling projects, and you feel like is this a good price? Like, is this worth it? Like, for most people that own a home, there's probably a laundry list of things you want to do. So to me, that was the hook, is like, for our home, being able to like look at different scenarios and like, oh, okay, if we did this kind of project, it would have this kind of effect on the ROI. Like, here's the rough price of it. And it's a really cool, just kind of like exploratory hook to model out those kind of things and see how the effect that has on like the portfolio, your personal real estate portfolio of your house. And that to me is a really cool consumer hook. But even like explaining that one hook took a while because there's not a one-to-one comp. You can, in gaming, you can show a battle in an RPG and just say play now, and people get it because they have a million other points of reference. I don't know, Xander,
Yeah.
you have thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I have quite a few thoughts. I think so. If the question is, what are the how do you create a segment? I think the first thing I think you said that was important, David, was you need to get the timing right, and that's something that's impossible. It's very difficult to do that. So I mean, sometimes you just got to get lucky, or you have to really be prepared.
It's not a moral victory when you were early.
Yeah.
And 5-10 years later, you see somebody else have massive success in that same space, and you say, "Well, I was there 5-10 years."
It's like, whoops. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The other thing you talked about, I think is really critical, is just the hook. And so those are sort of the two. If I dissect everything you said, it's like two components are timing and then getting the entry point. The hook, correct. One thing that you kind of described, it's like, is it accurate to say the aspirational goal for Plunk is to be basically a CRM for your home? Is that like do you think about it that way at all? That's sort of what it sounded like when you went through to describe it all.
Yeah, I think CRM is a feature set.
Sure.
Having, and I run into this, I'm on a personal level, avid homeowner, which means I've had the luxury and the blessing to be able to build second homes and third homes and cabins up in the mountains. And I love the process of building. So I'm a little different in that way. I should probably work on being able to just enjoy something more so than, okay, now let's go do the next thing. But that's more the way I'm wired. So I've gone through this quite a bit, and I'm like, well, gosh, why didn't I keep that guy that helped me with this problem? That great plumber, and you just fumble around to find contacts. And so there's a certain amount of value in doing that. There's a certain amount of value in having a home inventory for insurance and rating and all the reasons why you need to know what's in your home and what its value is. There's a certain amount of value in having your utilities all in one spot, that they can be analyzed, and you could be constantly having an agent on your behalf finding better rates, saving you money. Insurance companies are a great example. They change their rate structures all the time. And nobody wants to maybe reinvest in going to find a new company and get it quoted and go through all that. But that's the perfect job of a piece of software to go find those things for you and bring them to you and say, hey, we just found an opportunity where you could save $1,000 a year in your home insurance policy. So that's all great. I think there's a third one though here. So timing matters. You have to be in a time where consumers are willing, if you're trying to force behavior change, that's a lot of headwind.
Right.
So you have to have the timing where people saying, wow, this solves a problem for me and I get it. So, and then that hook with that initial value added where there's an immediate payoff, they see the value, they're motivated to download, engage enough to earn the right to give them other value and get them, part of an iteration process. The third one is really competition. I'll call it that. There's a nuance to it, but if nobody else is doing this, it's really hard.
Right.
But when other people see this and say, well, that's a good idea, we want that space too. And they start messaging. So the total marketing messaging and communications from the industry is, hey, there's a really valuable tool here that you should all have, and it helps you manage home ownership in some really impressive ways that save you time, save you money, make you more productive homeowner. And so if that's not happening, you're on an island. And, obviously a VC would say, well, there's a reason, because there's no market here, or you're too early, or your hook isn't good.
Yeah.
But when everybody else is copying, so we've already had a couple of copycat kind of players that come in and start using almost our UI, and, you build an app. It's really easy to reverse engineer that, use our messaging. If you don't have that, it's harder to build a category. You need competitors. I would also offer that our team needs a competitor to have a race, a competitive motivation to innovate every day faster. If there's somebody at your heels or somebody else you're going, toe to toe with, it makes
also
both of you a little faster.
It matters for really practical things, just like fundraising too. Like what are if there's no market comps?
Correct. I mean, they want to see that this is building, that a lot of people care about it. They're all trying to get after it. So there must have value. And so that's an indirect validation of your market space.
Right.
So just like to run it all back, timing, initial value, and or hook and competition. That's it. That's all you need to create a segment. Great. Okay. Do you have I want to also ask you about the state of gaming currently. So do you have any other questions about any other thoughts about this topic of building a category segment before we hop on to the next topic?
It's hard, but the payoff's bigger. So
Yeah,
it's truly
Salesforce
a
would
go
agree.
big or go home kind of value proposition for an entrepreneur.
Right.
I've never been a fast follower, kind of strategy guy. That's never been something I've been interested in doing. So I think certain people are wired to just go pioneer, and they're willing to fail or take more arrows in the chest. And
Yeah,
I guess that's where I've always been.
Extremely thick skin, because the fail rate of being first is like exponentially higher.
But the payoff is much higher too. Cool. So go ahead.
Yeah, you'd have to put, Robinhood, Mint, all those companies are in that same mode. They went out and created something new that didn't exist. And they helped lay the road for Plunk, for sure. Because people go to their phone for advice, to do financial investing, to do saving, to do crypto. Guess what? That's a small percentage of the US population. Although, by the way, gaming's changing that, making everybody more of a crypto investor, probably faster than any other trend right now in the space. But to think of your home, it's easier to say, yeah, I have an app for all this other stuff. That makes logical sense. This is actually, 68% of Americans own a home. So it hits a broader audience. So they've actually helped define that there should be a category for robo-advisor for your home ownership.
Yeah, I have a folder in my phone, just finance, and Plunk is in it. So awesome. Well, that's all super interesting. I did want to briefly touch on, so you touched on this at the top. Besides working at Plunk, you have a long history of entrepreneurship, including a background in gaming. I wanted to get your perspective on the gaming market as much as you're following it now. Where do you think about where the industry is and where it's heading, and for gaming specifically?
Yeah, I guess the haves and have-nots, we're seeing, like I said, any publishing business that starts to mature, you see the decline of a middle class. You see the innovative, fast twitch, agile companies trying to come in, find entry points. Some of them break through, most of them don't. And then you see the rich getting richer and richer and richer. And it's those fast innovating new startups that define the future, and the people that have substantial market share and moats around distribution and around community size end up buying those. That's the mode we're in right now.
Yeah.
The big companies are very healthy on balance sheet, very healthy on all their growth trends, and they're using those balance sheets more aggressively than they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, so if you're an investment banker, you've never been so busy. There's more active buyers. We've created a whole second wave of new companies that now have balance sheets that they are hunters instead of being hunted. Right. And they are starting to develop acquisition strategies to get bigger. And it's going to take a while for a third, wave to develop. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of activity, and you're going to see it remain healthy for the next couple of years. But you're going to see a lot of M&A and a lot of consolidation, and you're going to still see a dearth of the middle class.
So when you talk about this, are these mostly mobile focused game companies, or is this broadly like because the short two questions here. One is like, we're thinking a lot about Web3. We're talking to a lot of the Web3 games. I'm curious what your thoughts on Web3 is. And then when you talk about this M&A stuff, I mean, it seems like right now what's happening from my perspective, although I don't do as much M&A work as you do, is like the M&A, we're seeing consolidation M&A, and then on the Web3, on mobile, we're seeing consolidation through M&A, and on Web3, we're seeing investment in new studios. Is that the same thing you're seeing, or are you seeing
that's exactly right? So, the innovation is so fast on NFT and Web3 gaming that most people are in knowledge deficit trying to get caught up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's a few brave souls at the leading edge, most mentioned in the first press release you talked about.
yeah, many of them.
That are making sure they're on the front edge of the learning, and they're placing a lot of investments. But most people are just trying to learn to catch up.
Right.
Just trying to learn to catch up. So I think it's investment on the Web3 still. Nobody knows what's going to work, what's not going to work. There's still a lot of apprehension. So these are insurance policies. These are speculative bets. And the companies with balance sheets that can afford to do that are doing those across the board. And they're like, something's going to win, something's going to work, something's going to pop up, and we'll be on the board. We'll be on the cap table.
Right.
And we have a first, front row seat to learn. And we'll be the first to really grok this opportunity and fully participate and capture it.
Right. And I just want to comment that that's really the investment style that we see from the largest and most successful players, is that basket style of investing.
Correct.
Which is it's kind of antithetical to well, actually you have more history than me in more history than I do here, David, by miles, but like it's less in traditional startups. I feel like you're betting a lot on like, we really believe in this team. And what I see more in the Web3 spot is just like, do you check enough of these boxes? Okay, cool. Here's like our standard investment level. We're placing 50 of these bets.
That's like the A16Z model, right? It's like we got 1,000.
That would be a good, yeah, that's true. There's but in these early stages, there aren't mature teams to go bet on.
It's like you're
really at a loss for finding experience when there is no. So go back to 2008, 2009 and bet on a mobile games team. Really? Traditional teams didn't want to touch mobile. It was, a lesser citizen, and the newfangled mobile games companies came out of new players that didn't have long track records in anything. They were young and they grokked this new thing quicker than their older colleagues in the business. So there was a lot
but you can still bet on people, right?
Yeah,
if there's someone that is a great entrepreneur or a great game designer, it's that I guess that's more what I'm speaking to. If like proven teams, then no one has outside of maybe like you said, one hand of companies has actually shipped like proven successful Web3 games. But
that's another angle. Let's take your point about a proven game designer. A lot of this isn't about games. A lot of this isn't about story arc. A lot of this isn't about threads and character development and storyline. It's more about crypto speculation. So there's a lot of concern that we're losing our focus on the game experience. I mean, free to play did this. We forget the argument about free to play. How great of an entertainment experience could you create if you didn't worry about the free to play monetization mechanics you have to put into a game? When you start asking somebody to engage in the game in a paid way and convert them to a paid player, if you could erase all that and just build a great game experience, and they'd pay $30 to download it and play it, that would change your entire business, your entire game design, your entire level design, all that. So now we're introducing this NFT crypto trading mechanism, and it's dominating the thinking of creating these entertainment experiences.
I think that's a good point. And I've thought about this a lot. I mean, the reality is the old style of games still exists. Like Elden Ring just came off, sold 12 million copies, made $1 bajillion. Like, so there's still successful businesses doing the oldest model, just selling you a box. Then you have free to play games that came along, and they're doing, they were the biggest thing for the last 10 years. We talked about their current decline. And also they had a pretty big impact on how games were designed, because every game was basically designed to be a cash grab, but that was a market, an arbitrage. Not everyone, but broadly, there's a lot of these people just like, hey, can I get 17 cents out of it and pay 13 cents for it, whatever. The thing that I most worry about crypto is is the fact that most of the game designers are looking at it from the perspective of NFTs, and or the two token crypto economies that are then layered with a game. I think there's going to be really freaking good games that come out of Web3 space, but it's really going to be the companies that are like, I don't think you necessarily need an in-game token to do a really good game that has crypto assets. But that's like not even being considered across most of these projects. And that's the thing that's sort of wild to me, is the fact that Warren's like squirming in his seat, hearing me. But the fact that like
I actually agree with what you're saying. But
most people, I think there's a little overemphasis on crypto first, because that's where we saw it successful. Everyone looks at Axie and say, hey, well, we just got to copy them.
Right.
This is very natural. When you create a new media, the first thing that comes out is shovelware, that you shovel what you knew about the old one into the new one, and it doesn't always fit well. The people that are brilliant, that path the new way, are people that don't have that old traditional baggage. Look how long it took for great game designers to get mobile,
right?
If they ever did. So it's a new batch of different people with different perspectives that succeed on this new platform. And that's true of mobile. And that's going to be true of this NFT crypto environment where you're going to see the best work come after we've figured out how to fully change our perspective and still get back to creating an entertainment experience and not be so focused on the NFT and the crypto side of this thing.
Tokenomics.
Yeah, a few thoughts. I mean, David, what you mentioned about shovelware and people forcing Web3 into what they know, like that's absolutely what we're seeing. Like this era of games, so many that are shipping are ones that they weren't even the winners. They're like mediocre to failed free-to-play games where they've done a quick pivot and relaunching with a new name, often not even new art, but just adding like a blockchain economy underneath.
Right.
And kind of zooming out and like thinking about the broader theme of like innovating and doing new product categories. Like Xander and I were talking before the podcast of like, it's almost like I'm a huge bull on Web3 tech, but I was referring to it as lazy innovation. Like it's like, well, how are you innovating? We're adding blockchain
Web3
economy that looks like the Axie economy. And that's sort of like the innovation that even the investment world is comfortable betting on right now. But it's not innovation if you're just copying exactly what another company did successfully a year ago. So it's all the more credit to people like you that are actually creating new product segments, actually doing something truly new rather than just innovating by what the hot thing is in the M&A world that month.
And like I think the point, I think a good indicator of that is that Axie is trying to disrupt their own business model by launching a whole new game. And it's
exactly.
Like if the guys who are inventing the business model are doing something completely different in order to grow, and you're copying what they did initially, like you're gonna get mopped.
Right.
That's a real hard discipline to have too, more to the credit of the people behind Axie. I mean, to cannibalize your own success, but to realize if you don't, somebody else will. So that's a pretty mature kind of business perspective to have at such a young stage in the company. Yeah, it's impressive.
Okay, well, we've gone a little bit over, but thank you so much for that conversation, David. Really, really interesting stuff. We want to go to our last segment, which is App of the Week. David, do you have an app this week?
I do. But I was going to do it by kind of category. I need to reflect the mature. I guess I've been around before we had apps, so I covered the entire full experience of smartphone apps, and I mean that because we shipped our first what we like to believe were apps before we had color screens, before we had file systems on the phone, before we had enough memory to build any code that would have any user experience. And so early on, we would awe at every new app that came out, and you mature over time. So when I get older, I start to draw and place more value on apps that fit more of my mindset and lifestyle at my age or whatever. So if you went to an app like Golf Logics and you're trying to learn the game of golf, and you go out on a golf course and you're trying to really understand how to build a better game. This is a phenomenal product. It just awes me how they put this thing away. Yeah, you download it, you put in your course, and it's now a course management, but it tracks your decision-making, your behavior. It makes you a better golfer.
Oh yeah. I just started dabbling in golf, so I might have to look into this.
Yeah, it takes some discipline, but if you're really serious about getting better, and by the way, you have to, or you'll never get better at golf. It's not an easy sport to get better. The marginal value of practice and additional investment in the game of golf has a very small payoff. So you have to really grind to get just marginally better at golf. It's a very difficult sport. And I look at that app and I'm just amazed at how it's changed how I can enter a sport. Like I took golf up at COVID. I'm too old to jog now and do a number of things because of my knee. I can still golf. And it's pretty late to be trying to take a sport up. And I love this. Another one that I think is brilliant is called Unest. Unest, the simplest value prop ever. Years ago, there was a company that I admired here in Seattle called Netstock Direct, and they advertised this drip dividend reinvestment program. So this is an investment strategy. Ultimately, it got acquired by the company that's, I forget what they're called now, but it used to be ING, the big Lion financial services company.
Right.
And one day they realized they weren't getting any traction with people. And I knew the founders. I knew what they did, but I didn't use the app. They changed it to Share Builder, a way you can invest in your children. Well, they had me on a radio ad and I'm downloading it while I'm driving. True story. And I had accounts built for both my kids before I got in the driveway.
That's some effective UA right there.
Yeah.
It is, but it was all about messaging. Well, Unest is a way to invest in your kids, allow other friends, family, uncles, grandfathers to invest in your kids, build 529, the college tuition accounts that can go to any university. You can now tie your spending through it, and all that investment goes into a kids fund that you can, oversee. And it's a fantastic way to invest in your children and get the people in your family and to invest in them as well and build for your future in a simple brain. I mean, you can literally set up this thing and almost not touch it, or you can be highly engaged in it. And it's a fantastic, simple value prop. And it's much like the old Share Builder thing that I did for both my children. I think it's
really cool.
Also, most importantly, you can now give the gift of crypto according to their website.
That's coming soon. It's not there yet, but there's a module in that app that teaches kids about investing, including what they're going to be offering in the crypto space. We share an investor, so I know a lot about this company, and it's a fantastic little app. And then on the fun side, kind of a outcry of COVID and trying to keep it fresh and fun around the family, everybody should play around with Goldbelly once a month or two. It's just a way to find that cool food that's really unique to every area in the world that you can't travel to and get, but you can have overnight almost and have, a chance to taste and enjoy the best of everything from all over the world. So ordering, this started with me when my daughter and I just love cheesecake. We went on a cheesecake tasting tour of New York City. We decided which deli had the best cheesecake by our preferences, and we've been ordering it for years. And now I can go on Goldbelly and get the best cheesecake in New York or the best, jambalaya in New Orleans or the best barbecue in Kansas City. It's a fantastic site for just fun food.
Great.
Very cool.
I'll do that. I'll check that one out.
David, you're such a cheater. You did 3 apps of the week. But they're all good.
They had completely different bents, though. They were completely, one's, total utilitarian and financial. One is, your personal hobby hack. And the other one's just a little bit of fun and spice of life.
Awesome.
So in summary, we had Golf Logics, Unest, and Goldbelly. And we will link to each of those when we post the podcast. Xander, do you have an app this week?
They all improve your life in different ways.
Xander, do you have one app this week?
I do. I only have one. I run out of apps. We do this too often. So as anyone who's this podcast know, we are deep into the Web3 gaming space. And so I've been trying increasingly to play as many Web3 games as I can. I'm a big trading card game player, as is Warren. And one that came up repeatedly in conversations with various people is Splinterlands. Splinterlands is a web-based Web3 game built on the Hive engine, I believe, is their predominant underpinning. They have their own token and everything. The interesting thing here is it does one of the things that it solves one of the problems that we've complained about a lot, which is you can just go boot up an engine, boot up the game, and without paying anything, you can start playing the game with the base decks. And that is important. So I started playing the game a lot. I've really enjoyed it. Not a lot. I've played it a fair amount. I've really enjoyed it. The thing that has me hung up on, and the gameplay is good. And that's the thing that's really missing, is the gameplay is actually pretty good. I enjoy it. There's also a companion app on mobile, which you can play the game. It's fairly limited. Like the UI is not very good, but you can play the game on mobile. However, you can't do any transactions at all. They completely just block you and say, oh, there's no transactions to do here. Also, by the way, completely separately, you can go play the game on the website also, which is their clever way of getting around Apple, which is kind of funny. However, all that said, I'm still frustrated by how difficult it is to give them money. I want to buy packs. I want to play the game. And there are 2 ways of doing it. Either I can go through a personal identification process where I have to upload my driver's license and some stuff, and then I'm able to inload a credit card and purchase stuff, which is like just annoying and too many hoops that I don't want to do. It's probably the easiest thing. I probably should do that. Or you have to do the process of setting up a Hive wallet and then buying various cryptocurrencies and then converting it to their native Splinterlands token. And it's while the game is good and while they do have onboarding, it's still like kind of hilarious to me that I've like tried to pay them a bunch of times and I haven't been able to yet. And like maybe I should just go upload my ID so that I can just upload so I can give them money. But it's just freaking annoying. I don't want to upload my ID to every game I want to play.
And you have every incentive to want to do this. There's like you are, you know, the tip of the spear as far as like who they want to attract to play this. Like you play the card genre, you're entrenched enough in Web3 that like you understand the ecosystem.
Yeah, I want to make money. Yeah,
Right.
so it's just kind of frustrating, and I know this is gonna be solved in time, but like, so all I'd say is if you've got the stomach for it, go play Splinterlands. It's actually really easy to play. Just, you know, you have to jump through the hoops if you want to pay for stuff. Anyway, so Warren, do you have an app this week?
Yeah, mine is the laziest it's ever been because not only is this one obvious, but I've also used it before. But there's no other thing to say. My app this week is Axie Origin because it's finally out. We've talked a lot about the business around it, about the segment. So you can finally play the early access build of Origin, and just encourage people to go try it. Like again, it's free to play. So you've always wondered what Axie is. You know, this is a huge refinement of the game. The tutorials, and to Xander's point, like they've really worked on the tutorials and onboarding with this version of the game, and it's just fun. It's like very accessible with deep strategy. If you like CCGs, if you like Pokemon style games, or if you just want like that first taste of Web3 gaming with a real deal game with some depth to it that you can also jump into without like, you know, immense amount of blockchain knowledge, go check it out. I will not chill it more than
Anymore?
I have, other than just play it and make your own decisions. And the great thing is it's so easy to do so now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we went long again as usual, but I do want to thank you very much, David, for hopping on with us and having this conversation. If someone wants to get a hold of you or check out Plunk, where can they do that?
I am dbb@getplunk.com, and our website is getplunk.com. Very easy.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. My pleasure.
Yeah, one other thing I want to call out is we would like to hear from our audience. If you have feedback on us, you think that you're sick of hearing us show Web3 products or anything else than that, you think if you have specific guests you think we should get on the podcast, please email us. Our email is apptalk@uptick.com. Warren, do you want to take us out?
Yes, thank you again, David. This was a really great conversation, and it was refreshing to talk to someone, you know, not talking Web3. I think we're getting a little burnout on Web3 as main topic every episode, but also someone with the breadth of history and experience like yourself. So as always, the episode this week was brought to you by the folks at Uptick. And here at Uptick, we do all things to help your game or app grow. So that's everything from the people in the field, designing the ads, helping you refine and increase conversion of your app store, managing all the ad campaigns, to our technology around marketing analytics, around prediction, around creative asset management. And much like David trying to describe Plunk, it's hard to describe what we do in a couple of sentences. So if you are making an awesome app or game and just looking for help growing that, we're always happy to get on a call and just talk strategy, brainstorm, and see how we can help. So you can reach us at uptick.com. That's upptic.com.
Awesome. Talk soon.